Welcome to GCSE Biology Paper 1. The unit we are going to cover is Bioenergetics and specifically photosynthesis. Before we start lesson 1, it's going to be quite unusual, this remote learning. So what we need to make sure is that we set up a daily routine so that we know exactly what we're doing each day to help us maintain our focus. Our mission is to deliver the highest quality remote lessons as possible so that you are getting the most out of your time at home and don't fall behind with the learning. Top tips to help you maintain your focus. First of all, turn your phone off or put it in a different room. Secondly, do not have other web pages or windows open, so we're reducing the distractions as much as possible. Answer all the questions, and finally, try and get them all completed within one session, because each day you will have a daily video of lessons to follow. So try not to fall behind. This is why it's important to establish this consistent daily routine. As we do at school, we're going to follow the normal lesson design. We'll be starting with retrieval practice, where you'll have to recall knowledge that you've already learned either last week, 3 months ago, a year ago. Okay, so we'll continue with that. Then there'll be the teacher instructions, where I'll impart new knowledge or not new knowledge to the units that we are studying. You'll then have time to embed that new knowledge. And finally, you'll be given lots of slop, shed loads of practice so that you can practice using the knowledge that you've just obtained. So what will you need? You'll need, for the retrieval, a mini whiteboard. If you've got your SRBs, they should have a mini whiteboard on the back. If you haven't got a mini whiteboard, then pen and paper. It might be also useful to have some revision cards, and I'll talk about those in a moment. For the teacher instruction, there are resources to print out from Show My Homework, but I'll also try and put those resources into this slide, into this video, so that you can pause the video and use the resources from there. To embed the knowledge, again, mini whiteboards, pen and paper, or even someone to quiz you or to help you embed that new knowledge. And finally, we'll have practice. Again, there'll be resources on the Show My Homework site, but I'll try and include them in the videos as I make them. You may also, if you're going to use the resources from the video, you may want to use your exercise book to note down your answers. So, pause and organize. So the first thing we're going to do today is some retrieval practice. We're going to start off with biology. Here is the first retrieval slide. Notice there is the green background. The green is going to represent biology in the videos that I'm going to make. So here we're looking at cell biology. So if you could now pause and retrieve. Here are the answers to your first retrieval slide. So check your answers against the answers here. If there are any questions that you got wrong, maybe this is the time that you can start building up revision cards. As you can see, I'm using green for biology, so if you've got some green revision cards, write onto the cards the questions that you got wrong to help you remember in the future. So if you would now like to pause and revise. Here is the second retrieval practice slide, this time using a yellow background to represent chemistry. This one is on atomic structure. So if you could now pause and retrieve. here are the answers. So again, can you mark your work, check that you've got the answers correct. Anything you haven't got correct, maybe you could produce revision cards, use yellow card, and produce revision cards for the questions that you didn't know in this chemistry slide. So if you can now pause and revise. Final slide on blue for retrieval of physics knowledge. So this is particle model of matter. So again, on your whiteboard or on your piece of paper, can you answer these questions? So pause and retrieve. Here are the answers. So check your answers and correct them. And any that you've got wrong, you may want to produce revision cards. I suggest blue, because like I say, blue is the colour I'm going to use for physics, yellow for chemistry, and green for biology. So if you can now pause and revise. So we've now covered retrieval practice. We will now get into the teacher instruction. Again, there are resources for you to download from Show My Homework, but if you can't for some reason, this is the document that you'd be printing it out anyway. So this is what I'm going to cover in the lesson today. So if you need to, can you pause and organize? So bioenergetics, photosynthesis. So let's break down the meaning of the word photosynthesis first of all. So photo means using light energy, synthesis to make. Okay, so photosynthesis is basically using light energy to make something. So what do plants make? They make sugars. Specifically, they make glucose, and glucose is a simple sugar. It's a simple carbohydrate. Okay, so all photosynthesis is using light energy to make the sugar glucose. Okay, so that's straightforward. Where does this take place? Well, let's have a look. If you remember back to the organization topic, we looked at plants as well as animals, and we looked at the leaf. And here is the diagram of the internal structure of a leaf. Hopefully you remember this. Now, the part that we're interested in for photosynthesis is here, the palisade mesophyll layer. Notice we've got all the palisade cells lined up on their ends so we can pack more of them in, and those palisade cells are chock-a-block full of chloroplasts. Okay, and those chloroplasts contain the green pigment chlorophyll, which is needed to absorb light energy. Okay, so that's where about 80% of photosynthesis takes place in a plant. So, how is it made? How is this glucose produced? So, this is the first thing on your new knowledge sheet that you need to write down. Basically, carbon dioxide has to react with water to produce glucose and also oxygen. Now, for this to happen, you also need light energy. This is why light is written above the arrow, and you also need chlorophyll, okay, which is the green pigment found in chloroplasts. So I've just written that underneath the arrow to remind you of that. So light and chlorophyll aren't reactants, they're not products. They're just needed for this reaction, this chemical reaction of photosynthesis to take place. Okay. Thinking back to our energy changes topic, where we looked at endo and exothermic reactions, we can see that photosynthesis is in fact an endothermic reaction because light energy is taken in from the surroundings. Okay, so the process, the chemical reaction needs light energy. So it's an endothermic reaction. Okay, so where does the water and the carbon dioxide come from? So the water is found in the soil and carbon dioxide is in the air. Okay, so how does the water get into the plant? Well, if you remember, the roots have root hair cells that actually absorb the water from the soil by the process of osmosis. So the water enters the root hair via osmosis. It then travels up through the root and through the stem in xylem tubes. Okay, so there's the xylem tubes, and then into the leaf. Okay, and then it can travel via osmosis into the palisade cells and into the chloroplasts. The carbon dioxide, on the other hand, that enters through the leaf itself. Okay, so I'm showing you that. It actually enters the leaf through the stomata, which are the tiny pores on the underside of the leaf. In fact, here is a diagram of a stoma. Remember, singular, stoma, many, stomata. So there's a stoma. So the carbon dioxide actually diffuses through the stoma, through the spongy mesophyll layer, into the palisade cells and into the chloroplasts. Okay, as we can see there. Notice with the spongy mesophyll layer, there are these air spaces, and those air spaces allow the carbon dioxide to diffuse more easily to the palisade cells. Okay, so we know how the water gets into the plant and specifically into the chloroplasts, and we know how the carbon dioxide gets into the chloroplasts. So this is the word equation that you need to remember, but you also need to know the symbol equation. So we need to know the formula of these particular molecules. So we need to know the formula of carbon dioxide, water, oxygen, and glucose. Now, carbon dioxide, CO2, water, H2O, oxygen, O2, and glucose, this is the one that you probably haven't heard of before or find tricky to remember, is C6H12O6. So there it is. Now that we know the formulas of the reactants, carbon dioxide and water, and the products, glucose and oxygen, we can write a balanced equation. So we've got our carbon dioxide, which reacts with our water to produce our glucose and our oxygen. Now, this equation at the moment isn't balanced, so you've done balancing equations in chemistry. I'm not going to go through how to balance it. Now I'm just going to give you the balanced formula. So we've got 6 carbon dioxides reacting with 6 water molecules to produce 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen. Okay, so you need to know the word equation and you need to know the balanced symbol equation for photosynthesis. So hopefully you've got those now written on your written down either in your books or on the resource that you've printed out from Show My Homework. What I'd like you to do now then is do a bit of embedding. I'd like you to learn the word equation and the symbol equation. So if you can pause the video now and embed. Right, hopefully you have embedded the word and the symbol equation so that you know them off by heart. What we're going to look at now in the final part of the lesson before you do some practice, is we're going to look at what the glucose that is produced via photosynthesis is used for. So what I thought I'd do first of all is show you a Sean Donnelly video. This is the free science lessons that you can find on YouTube. This is about 2.5 minutes. If the sound quality isn't very good, I've also given you the link down here underneath the video so that you can watch it yourself through YouTube. And I'll put this link into the Show My Homework document anyway that goes along with this lesson. So let's just quickly watch this video and then we'll discuss it later.
Hi and welcome back to freesciencelessons.co.uk. By the end of this video, you should be able to describe how the glucose produced in photosynthesis is used. Over the last few videos, we've been looking at photosynthesis. I'm showing you the word equation for photosynthesis here. Remember that in photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and water are chemically reacted using the energy from light. This produces the sugar glucose and the gas oxygen. In this video, we're looking at the uses of the glucose produced in photosynthesis, so let's get started. The first use for the glucose is to release energy in respiration. Remember that respiration takes place in the mitochondria, and I'm showing you those here. Now remember that photosynthesis only produces glucose during the day when there's light. But plant cells respire all the time, including at night. So the second use of the glucose produced by photosynthesis is to produce the insoluble storage molecule starch. The starch can be converted back to glucose by the plant when it's needed, for example at night. Now in many plants, the glucose produced in photosynthesis is converted to fats and oils, such as this olive oil. Fats and oils are used by the plant as a storage form of energy. In a previous video, we saw that the plant cell is enclosed in a cell wall. The cell wall contains the molecule cellulose, which gives it strength. This cellulose is made from the glucose produced by photosynthesis. Okay, there's one final use for the glucose produced in photosynthesis, and that's to produce amino acids. Now, amino acids are used by the plant to synthesize proteins, and foods such as peas are good protein sources. To make amino acids from glucose, plants need to absorb nitrate ions from the soil.
So from watching the video, you should now know the 5 main uses of glucose that is produced by the plant via photosynthesis. Now let's go through those quickly just to make sure you've jotted them down. If you haven't jotted them down, can you jot them down either in your exercise books or on the resource that you printed out from Show My Homework. So the first use, respiration. Okay, so this is how the plant gets its energy to carry out life processes. The second, making cellulose. So cell walls are made out of a substance called cellulose, and that's produced from glucose. We've got making amino acids, and those amino acids can link together to make proteins. But for the plant to make amino acids, it needs nitrates, which it absorbs through its roots from the soil as well, and the nitrates basically react with the glucose to form the amino acids. The glucose can also be stored as fats or oils in seeds, and finally it can be stored as insoluble starch, meaning the starch, of course, will not dissolve. So if you can just make sure you've jotted those 5 uses down, please. And now we will embed the new knowledge. So I'd like you to embed, again, the word equation for photosynthesis, the symbol equation for photosynthesis, and now the uses of the glucose that is produced from photosynthesis. So please pause and embed. Now that you've embedded that new knowledge, it's time for us to practice using your new knowledge. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to pause and complete the slop. That's the shed loads of practice. There are 14 questions. These are the questions. So these are the first 7. and these are the second 7. So either go to Show My Homework and print these questions out, or do them from this video. But can you, if you're doing it from the video, can you write out the question with the answer, please? Either in your books, preferably, or on paper. Okay, so if we will now, if you could pause and slop. Hopefully you've completed all those 14 slop questions, and next lesson we will go through the answers after we've done our 3 retrieval slides. So until next lesson, if you need to do some more retrieval, we'll still run weekly recall tests. These will probably be on Fridays, and it'll be based on the work that we've been doing during the week. If you haven't completed the slop, please do that now before you move on to your next lesson. And finally, share the video. See you soon.